Hi, Ashley. Today I'm going to tell you a story. I had to keep my jacket on just for that when I came home. But it's too warm in here to be wearing a jacket this whole time. Okay, so I'm not actually going to tell you a story, but I have been thinking a lot about stories and the nature of stories and the originality of stories and what makes a story good and original. Lately, probably has a lot to do with a lot of the classes I'm taking, and I thought I'd share my thoughts with you because I have no one else to tell. So, the main question that I've been asking is what makes a story good/original? And I'm going to be using a couple examples today. I just like really popular, really famous stuff like Tolkien's books, Rowling, and then also George Lucas and Star Wars and stuff like that, because that's pop right now with all the Force Awakens and all that. So, in general, these storylines are kind of average, not really super complex storylines. They're not like groundbreaking ideas, and in the essence of the story is not particularly groundbreaking. So, what makes them popular? And as a side note, I just like to say that I realize that popularity and good for a story are not, it's not a one-to-one thing, it's not equivalent, in that there are a lot of stories that are really, really good that are not particularly popular. And there are stories that are popular that I watch or read and I'm like, okay, you know? So, first of all, popularity, I'm picking these three massive franchise/stories, you know, but just because they're popular doesn't necessarily mean they're even good, but I think these three are. One question that I've been thinking about is, does a story need to be original to be good? And I think the answer is kinda no. Originality is not something that, like, you need to come up with a super amazing, different storyline that no one's ever thought of before. Harry Potter, it's about a young boy who gets sent to a school of magic. Not particularly original. That was done before Rowling, and that was done after, you know? It's not something that was, like, groundbreakingly, wow, that's amazing, no one's ever thought of that before. You know? I mean, he's the chosen one. Wow, never heard that before. But still, it's something very near and dear to, like, our entire generation's heart. Like, Harry Potter is our story, you know, and it's beautiful. And I love Harry Potter, and I love the series. Riley, you're ruining my take here. And it is amazing, despite the fact that it's not particularly original. And the same kind of goes for Star Wars. Lucas came up with a story that it's you know, the whole hero arc, the circular model that you've seen over and over and over again. I mean, 4, 5, and 6, starting with, you know, New Hope. I don't know, the whole episode thing is very confusing. We need a systematic way of referring to them, but Luke's, wow, it just occurred to me that the guy's name is George Lucas and that his main character is Luke. Anyway, Luke's journey follows that hero arc circular story perfectly, and it's been done a billion times before. And yet, Star Wars was the most exciting thing to have ever come out when it came out. And that has a lot to do with all the special effects, and that he created this whole galaxy, despite the fact it's a very small galaxy. He created this whole galaxy and all these things, and, you know, he incorporated stuff in. And then Tolkien, yeah, it was original, but it wasn't, he borrowed a lot. Authors borrow a lot, and he took a lot of his influences were, you know, he was a linguist, so all the Old English stories and the epics and all that stuff was deeply incorporated into his Tales of Middle-earth. And so basically what I'm saying here is that these three amazingly beautiful stories are not particularly original in that they've never been done before. And yet they are original because there's something about them that excites that love of story within us. And that's what makes them original. And the interesting thing about all these stories is that I think there's this idea when you're a writer or a storyteller in any sense, that there has to be like a perfection to your stories, that it has to be this just amazingly done arc, or else you're ruined forever. And that's not really true. I mean, all these authors have flaws. Tolkien is, as much as I love his writing, kind of long-winded. I mean, did we really need to spend 200 pages getting out of Bag End? Why did we need to watch 20 years of Frodo packing? He was packing for 20 years, oh my gosh, it's agonizing. And yet, we forgive him because it's Tolkien. And then the whole Tom Bombadil thing, which is beautiful in its own right, and I wouldn't trade out Tom Bombadil for the world, but if I was writing that, I would have cut Tom Bombadil because he has nothing to do with the whole overarching story. And the same thing goes for Lucas. Like, there's a lot, I'm gonna reframe, but there's a lot that I could say about Star Wars where it's not there's a lot of mistakes. Not even like fundamental mistakes in Star Wars where it's like, you don't do that with a story. You know, that's not how you make a good story. And yet they are, you know, good stories for the most part. We're not really talking about 1, 2, and 3, although there are good elements. There are things that could have been done better in Star Wars. You could cut out incest and Jar Jar Binks, and that would raise it up a couple notches. But it's still a good story, and it's despite its flaws. And I don't know, I feel uncomfortable insulting Harry Potter, but there are things that could have been better. It's not a particularly diverse story. I know a lot of people kind of have problems with that. And the same goes for Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, now that I think about it. So, these ideas, where I'm going with it is basically that they're ideas that are not perfect and yet make good stories, and we raise these stories up on this massive pedestal, and it's just like, oh, the story to end all stories, and we must, you know, revere these, and they, too, are flawed and not maybe as original as we think they are, because, you know, I don't want to say there's only so much you can do with a story, but there's a really, really fine balance that I'm discovering, which is frustrating at times, between, like, be original and, you know, do the thing differently, don't write about girls in dystopian societies who take over and, not take over, but who defy the system and then, woo, victorious. Victorious. On the other hand, if that's what you want to write about, and that's what's exciting to you, and if you can come up with a good storyline that really, really works, and you want to write, then that's what you need to write about. Because if all you're trying to do is be original, and you're not thinking about what you want to write and what's in your brain to write, then it's not, the reader can tell. You can tell when it's not, when the story isn't from a really deep place in your heart, so to speak. I think this is kind of all wrapping up just to say that writing and stories in general is a very fine balance of what you want and what is new. Not new necessarily, but innovative. And sometimes what is innovative and what is interesting is not new. Most of the time it's kind of not, you know? And that's why I know a lot of people were complaining about the new Star Wars movie, in that it's just like A New Hope with new characters. And that they didn't try to break that mold and, you know, Infinity and Beyond type thing. But I think I loved it, as you know. I thought The Force Awakens was beautiful, amazing story, very well crafted, and it wasn't particularly original. There are lots and lots of elements that were exactly like A New Hope, and yet I loved it, and I ate it up. So there's a lot to be said for originality, but it's not the end-all be-all. And you can make a fantastic story without it being the most unique, phenomenal thing that's ever been created. So, wow, talk about long-winded. Tolkien's got nothing on me. Your special guest speaker that was going to talk about Shakespeare is feeling under the weather today, but she will make a Shakespeare-centric creation very soon. So yeah, hope that wasn't too boring. Found something interesting. Let me know what you think about that past, 10 minutes. Whew. Hope the cornfields are treating you well, and I will see you soon.